Hello and welcome back to Quiet RC. As usual, I'm Rob. Today we're going to talk about my Tamiya Hotshot II Blockhead Motor Custom Edition and how I customized the Custom Edition. We're also going to do some runs with it. Stay tuned. Oh, I took out my Blockhead Motors Wild One and it didn't do as well on the runs. Let's talk Hotshot II, the Blockhead Motors edition that I've then customized. So first and foremost, you'll notice that this is pink. The kit itself comes with a pre-painted blue body. Now, a lot of fuss was made when this first came out or was announced that it was largely the same livery as the Wild One that came out a few months or a year earlier. In actuality, the blue is just slightly different, but overall, it's kind of the same, blue, white with yellow accents. I had done my Blockhead Motors in kind of a pink and polka dot livery, which there's an earlier video of that. However, when I did this one, I decided I wanted to do the pink and white as well, but I decided to go with this white striped livery, this kind of offset chevron up front with some shadowing on the stripes. I practiced this on my HPI Micro RS4 build, also a video on that. Now, to get a unpainted body was kind of interesting because when this kit first came out, the Tamiya website had a part number listed for a clear body set, including the wing and the little parts here on the back and this part on front, which originally I thought were aluminum as well, like the top plate here, but they're not. They're actually painted silver. So I was looking around and I was wondering when this was actually going to be made available because on the Tamiya website, it just had a $0. You couldn't add it to your wish list. Obviously, you couldn't buy it. So I kept poking around. There's a website out of Germany called Tamico, T-A-M-I-C-O, and they had the pre-painted version listed on their website. I actually emailed them and said, are you going to be carrying this clear version that is listed by part number on the Tamiya website? They kind of said, yeah, keep a lookout on the website. Now, eventually, they did have it. I ordered it, but it took, I think about 2 months after the actual release and delivery of the kit. So this kit sat unbuilt in my workshop for several months after it was released, even though I had pre-ordered it. So I got it, and then it just sat for a long time. Eventually, like I said, that Tamico website had the clear body. I ordered it. Coming from Germany, took a while. When it came, the box was completely destroyed. I mean, it looked like something out of the beginning of Ace Ventura. For those of you who are old enough to get that reference. However, opened it up and it was in good shape. I also had another kit in there, but that was also in good shape. But body was fine, so that's a whole nother part of this journey, and we'll get into some of the customizations on that. The first thing that you build is the front and rear diffs, and it is kind of interesting going back and building these kits from the 80s, having built current Tamiyas and even Tamiyas throughout the late 90s, early 2000s. You can see the evolution. So for example, the drive cups now are kind of 1 or 2 pieces with a shaft that goes all the way through. This was actually a shaft that's just kind of free floating. So if you lose a dog bone while you're out there, there's totally a chance that that could just come flying out, and it's a fairly small piece and you'll just lose that completely. So interesting evolution. The other thing that was interesting is when you're installing the motor, you have these shims that will determine your gear mesh. Obviously it depends on the pinion tooth count that you're gonna have in there. So that's also interesting and very difficult to set. Now, Tamiya for a long time and still even currently, they'll give you, oh, you install it through these holes exactly for this pinion tooth count or this gear mesh or whatever. So it's kind of interesting that this is one method that they had tried out and obviously it didn't last. So as you're building it, you go through a lot of the construction of the front. The steering hubs don't have any marking as to which one is left and right, and they kind of come on their own sprue, so they're not individually numbered, so it's weird. A lot of the non-actual aluminum parts that are colored it's kind of interesting to see what parts are on that tree. Obviously, this is probably a parts tree mold originally from the 80s, so they didn't change that, even though for this release, they do this kind of aluminum, kind of chromed look. So there's some parts internally that are colored like some of these hubs and steering knuckles that for no reason are colored that way. One thing you'll notice here is I am kind of going with the pink motif. I also have a pink servo in here. I have these wires that I got through, I believe these are actually Tekin wiring, pink, just kind of a way to keep that motif going throughout. I originally was going to do pink shocks, but I'll get into the issue with that. While you're building this chassis, one thing I noted in the chassis is that it does have its original 1980, early 80s copyright stamp still in the chassis, so it leads me to believe that they're using the original molds. What that does though is one thing they have, and to me it still does this, I mentioned it in my XV02 Pro build video. They have this idea that their ESC switches have never changed, will never change, but in reality, I believe during the pandemic they were having some sourcing issues. So a lot of their kits now come with an ESC that's not actually Tamiya, and it has a different switch. So some see on various forums, beginners saying, hey, do I have the wrong ESC because it doesn't fit? No, you just have to double-side tape it on, use shoe glue, whatever. So that's what I had to do. There is a mechanical box on the chassis, and there's a good amount of real estate in there, even with a standard size servo, and probably even with a larger receiver. Mine's relatively small, but there's still plenty of room to get in there. You'll notice I have these lights here, and they actually do light up. Plenty of room for the wiring in there for that. Probably stop the video here for a second and go put a battery in so I can actually show you that. Hold on. All right, there we go. So, wiring up the lights here. The Yeah Racing kit comes with 2 front white lights and 1 set of rear red lights. So I just cut off the 2 extra fronts, put these on here and wired it up. In this mechanical box that they put up front here, there's plenty of room for all the wires to live in, so you can get it on there. Getting them the right length and shortening up and putting on all the body parts, that's a little bit more of a challenge. It's not perfect here, but I could do better maybe if I sat down and tried. The driver in here you actually install a little bit earlier, and that put a little bit of a stop on the whole build process because I wasn't ready for that. And I wanted to custom paint him. So he's in there, custom helmet paint job, his face, eyes, everything like that are all painted up, but it just took a minute to get that all squared away. And then you put that in there, and that actually doesn't need to come out because it doesn't go anywhere. The battery just sits underneath him. So once that's in there, it's all done. As you're building it, I decided to tape the roof into place as you're trying to put all of the zip ties to hold everything together, because not only are you zip tying the aluminum roof on, you're also doing the netting around here. And in the instructions, they actually kind of have you temporarily zip tied into place, then you get everything situated, and then you come back and put new zip ties in. Kind of a weird way to do it, but I didn't have to do that because I did tape this into place, and because the netting on the Wild One, I had a little practice with that. Now, for the dampers, they're in the kit, they're yellow. I decided I didn't want to go with the yellow dampers. The only real yellow I wanted was just little accents. So I did go on a little bit of a journey trying to find just the right dampers. I originally had wanted to use Yeah Racing's pink anodized dampers, however they don't make them long enough. I did build just one of the kit supplied dampers just so I could get the actual length of that damper, which is about 90 millimeters all the way around for all 3 here. I ended up with just these silver bodied ones. I would probably go with a stiffer spring in front because this does bottom out very easily. Even though the fluid I have in here, the shock oil, is pretty thick, the pistons that they offer in the kit have really large holes, so it's kind of difficult to really get that to slow down. In the back here, these are also, the droop is too far, and what you get is it'll kind of lock in place there, and the rear dog bone will come out, and you'll kind of get like a weird clicking as you're driving it. These aren't great dampers. I probably wouldn't recommend them, but this is what I used for this build. As I was building out the front end, putting on the front skid plate, I realized that there is about a 10 or 12 millimeter long hex kind of bolt in here, metal bolt, and I had turned it just one turn too far, and that meant that the hole for the screw that holds on the front plate was not aligned correctly. So I did have to disassemble part of the front suspension in the front here and part of the diff just to get that turned the right way. Similar thing happened when I built the rear skid plate. I found that I had missed completely a small piece that goes in here that these two screws actually hold on and go into. You'll also notice that I have a smaller alloy bumper here on the front, similar to what I did with my Wild One. I don't really like the full width black Tamiya one, just a preference, but these were available. I got this off of eBay somewhere. As you are assembling the wheels and everything, during building early on, they actually have you use body pins to hold on the axles as you're building, which is nice because I've had plenty of builds where that's just kind of constantly sliding in and out and you're battling it. Maybe you have the little axle pins that go in there and they're sliding around on you all over the place. They have you use body pins to temporarily hold everything in place while you're building the rest of the vehicle. When you do the wheels and tires, I made this mistake on my Wild One. The chromed or silvered plastic pieces, molded pieces that they have here, when you go to put the tire on and when you go to glue it specifically, that glue will actually only stick to the coating. So you'll actually have the tires separate from the molded plastic wheel. So you have to go in and you have to sand every ridge, 2 on each wheel, to get those tires to actually stay glued to the wheels. So let's go a little bit into the saga of the body and painting that. As I mentioned, the kit does come with a pre-painted one and it's pre-cut out, which is really nice because the wing is a little bit complicated. It does also have these little accent pieces that are on the front and the rear, and those are pre-cut in this. When I got the body separately, the clear one, it was not cut out, so you had to do all that. But the other interesting thing was, as I was trying to find the correct clear body for this, I was asking around, hey, do we know if this is the same as the original Hotshot body, as the original Hotshot II, or even Super Shot body? And nobody really had a great answer, because you can get those, either original ones or Team Blue Groove, that are obviously not original, but they're remakes. As I was trying to find this, I did finally end up with the correct clear body. When it arrived, it wasn't cut out, so it was still just, you know, from the mold, and it had a copyright of 2022. As I mentioned, the chassis has its copyright stamp of the mid-80s, whatever, and the body has 2022. So that leads me to believe that the body for the Blockhead Motors edition is unique to the Blockhead Motors edition. I know for sure that this whole cockpit is kind of raised up so you can see the driver a little bit better, but it does appear that the body itself is unique to the Blockhead Motors edition. As you can see from my earlier Blockhead Motors Wild One video, I did a custom paint job on that, and I wanted to continue that motif so they kind of matched on the shelf, but a little something different. I did this kind of offset chevron stripe with shadowing behind it. I practiced that on the HPI Micro RS4 build. There's a video for that out there if you want to check that out. Even had a little bit of accent on the rear wing here. There was nothing on the chassis that I had to paint similar to the Wild One, but I think in the end it turned out really great. I did not back it in black because I did have some issue when I backed the other one in black. It tended to darken up this paint a little bit. Now, we'll go to some run footage. There's a track not too far away from me, maybe about half an hour, that is just at a municipal park, so it's just kind of fun to go and mess around at. These aren't really meant to take out on the track and really hit hard. It's a little slow. There is a Blockhead Motors branded motor in here, and it appears to just be one of the Tamiya standard silver can, or maybe even their torque tune, but it's relatively slow compared to, especially what's out there today. But even when I built this one, I put a 19 turn in there, and the Wild One could clear one of the large jumps there, or almost clear it. This didn't make it. It was nose planting right into the side of the into the face of the jump. It was fun to tear around the track though. It handled fine. You can definitely tell how the 4-wheel drive helps it. and I got some good sliding out of it. I got some jumps that were smaller, that were easy to control in the air, and overall it was just like fun to drive. So I would probably take this out on the track again, but there's another track I know that has a little bit tamer jumps on it, and I would take it out in the dirt there. Now, the difference was this one did not make it so well. So this is going to be a little bit of a part 2 of my original Blockhead Motors video, because I'm going to talk a little bit about driving this a little harder than I did in the original video. When it went off the jumps and it would land, it would bottom out. It's usually not a problem. However, the way the rear trailing arm is designed, it actually mounts to these posts right here, but also has a metal mount that goes into the actual chassis itself. The whole chassis is one piece, and this part it mounts to right here. And on both sides, it blew through that. I kept having the dog bones fall out while I was driving. I couldn't understand why. And the reason was the trailing arms had come off completely or loose enough to where the dog bones would pop out. And this is a problem, because in order to fix this, I would have to replace the entire chassis. Now, as you can see, and as I've talked about, boy, I did a custom paint job here, but with the Wild One, the way that the Blockhead Motors edition was, it was blue, and this part right here was actually a one solid decal. So in order to continue my paint scheme, I actually had to mask off the whole chassis, prime, paint, mask off, do my airbrushing work, and then I had to cut out all of the little decals individually, and then I had to clear coat it. So I'm just not going to go back and do that. So I think I'm going to just kind of use maybe a little JB Weld or something back here, but this sadly is going to be retired to the shelf because it's just not going to be strong enough after that. I'll be too afraid to drive it and break it again. However, I do love the look of this one. Well, thanks for watching. Of course, if you liked what you saw, please like. If you have any suggestions or questions, please comment below. And as always, please subscribe. We're a small channel just trying to grow here. Anyways, we'll talk RC again later. Thanks.